What you are about to hear will make you rethink every relationship you have ever had. There are 5 things that people around you, people you love, people you work with, people you call friends, will ask you for without realizing what asking actually costs you. 5 things that the moment you give them away, something inside you begins to quietly die. Not all at once. Slowly. Invisibly. The way a candle loses itself in its own light. Giving and giving until there is nothing left to burn. The Stoics watched this pattern for centuries. They studied it in royal courts and slave quarters, in the homes of the wealthy, and in the barracks of soldiers. And what they observed was both heartbreaking and clarifying. The most generous people were often the most depleted. Not because giving is wrong, but because they were giving the wrong things. The things that, once given away, cannot be replaced, cannot be borrowed back, and leave a person fundamentally less capable of becoming who they were made to be. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who had more people asking more of him than almost any human being who has ever lived, said something in his private journals that almost no one outside philosophy circles ever hears. He said that the greatest act of self-mastery is not the accumulation of virtue. It is the protection of what makes virtue possible in the first place. The energy, the time, the peace, the power. These are not luxuries. They are the raw materials of a meaningful life. And the moment you treat them as freely available to anyone who asks, you have made a fundamental error, one that will cost you everything the longer it goes uncorrected. This video is about those 5 things. What they are, why they are so dangerous to give away, what the Stoics said about protecting them, and what your life begins to look like when you finally, firmly, and without apology stop giving them to people who were never meant to have them. Follow this channel right now if you have not already. What we build here every single week is exactly this. Ancient wisdom sharp enough to change how you think today. Follow, and let us begin. Number 1. Your peace. The most expensive gift you keep giving for free. Here is something that will feel uncomfortably familiar. Someone walks into your space, physically, emotionally, digitally, and within minutes, the quality of your inner world has completely changed. The calm you spent your morning building is gone. The clarity you had about what you needed to do today has evaporated. The quiet confidence that was sitting in your chest has been replaced by something heavier, something tangled, something that buzzes with other people's anxiety and other people's urgency and other people's unresolved chaos. And the most devastating part? You let it happen. Not because you are weak, because you were never taught that peace is something you have the right and the responsibility to protect. The Stoics were absolutely clear on this, and they were not gentle about it. Epictetus, who knew more about having his peace stolen than almost anyone, a man who was owned, who was physically tortured, who had no control over his external circumstances for the first half of his life, wrote with a ferocity about the interior life that almost shocks the modern reader. He said that the only true possession a human being has is the quality of their own mind. Everything else, property, reputation, relationships, physical safety, can be taken. The mind cannot, unless you give it. And that is the crucial word, give. Because Epictetus understood that no one can actually take your peace. They can only receive it when you hand it over. When you allow their chaos to become your chaos. When you pick up their urgency and treat it as your own. When you let their crisis, real or manufactured, override the calm you had deliberately, effortfully constructed inside yourself. Think about the specific ways this happens every day. The person who calls you not to share something but to unload, to pour their anxiety into your ears until they feel lighter and you feel heavier. The colleague who brings their dysfunction into every interaction and then wonders why everyone around them is tense. The family member who has been in a state of perpetual crisis for as long as you can remember, who needs your peace the way a fire needs oxygen, consuming it completely and leaving ash where calm used to be. The Stoic response to all of this begins with a recognition that is both simple and radical. Other people's emotional states are not your responsibility to absorb. This is not coldness. This is not the absence of love or compassion. In fact, and this is the paradox that most people never reach, you can only genuinely help someone from a place of peace. The person who has given their peace away has nothing real left to offer. They are operating on empty, reactive, depleted. They cannot pour from an empty vessel, no matter how badly they want to. Marcus Aurelius wrote every morning before engaging with his day, before the senators, the generals, the supplicants, the crises. He established his peace first. He rooted himself in his values, his perspective, his sense of what actually mattered. And then, from that rooted place, he engaged with the world, not the other way around. He did not let the world set the quality of his inner experience. He said it himself, before the world got involved. Your peace is not a gift. It is not a service. It is not something people are entitled to ask for, and certainly not something you are obligated to provide on demand. It is the ground of everything you are capable of doing and being. Protect it like Marcus Aurelius protected it, not with walls, not with coldness, but with the quiet, firm, unapologetic priority of a person who understands exactly what is at stake when it is gone. The next time someone walks into your space and begins the process of disturbing what you have built inside, pause. Take one breath and ask yourself, am I choosing to let this in, or am I simply not realizing I have a choice? Because you always have a choice. The Stoics spent centuries trying to make that clear, and it is one of the most important truths you will ever be given. Your peace is yours. Keep it. Number 2, your time, the currency you are spending on the wrong people. Nobody asks for your time. That is the thing people almost never realize. They ask for a favor. They ask for 5 minutes. They ask for a quick call, a brief meeting, a small task. And somewhere inside the politeness of the request, the real ask, which is hours of your life, irreplaceable, unrecoverable, permanently gone, is hidden so effectively that most people never see it until the day they look back at a month, a year, a decade, and wonder where it went. Time is the most democratic resource in human existence. Every person alive, regardless of their wealth, their power, their talent, or their circumstances, receives exactly the same allocation, 24 hours per day. No one gets more. No one can earn more. The billionaire and the beggar wake up with the same number of hours available to them. The only difference, and this is a difference that compounds across a lifetime into something so vast it determines almost everything about the quality of a life, is what they choose to do with those hours, who they choose to spend them on. Seneca opened his essay on the shortness of life with a statement so direct, so accurate, so confronting that it has never lost its power across 2,000 years. He wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a great deal of it." And then he named, with devastating precision, the specific way most people waste it. They give it away. They spend it on the wrong things, the wrong people, the wrong obligations. Not because those things are asked for dishonestly, but because the person giving never stops to ask whether the cost is proportional to the return. Here is the hard truth the Stoics were not afraid to say. Not every person in your life deserves equal access to your time. This is not elitism. This is mathematics. You have a finite number of hours, and an effectively infinite number of demands on those hours, which means that every yes is simultaneously a no to something else, someone else, some other use of the irreplaceable minutes of your life. Every hour you spend in a conversation that drains you is an hour you did not spend building something that matters. Every afternoon you give to someone who takes without reciprocating is an afternoon you did not give to your own growth, your own craft, your own relationships that actually feed you. The Stoic test for how to allocate time is elegant and demanding. Does this use of my time move me closer to the person I am trying to become, or further away? Not does it feel good in the moment. Not does it make this person happy with me. Not is it what I have always done. Does it serve virtue, which the Stoics defined as the full expression of human excellence? Does it serve growth? Does it serve the long-term flourishing of a life that is genuinely worth living? This test, applied honestly, will reveal something that most people are not ready to see. A significant portion of their time is being spent on people and activities that serve neither of those things. It is being spent on maintenance of social appearances, on the avoidance of the guilt that comes with saying no, on the management of other people's expectations, on the performance of busyness that looks like productivity but produces nothing of actual value. Marcus Aurelius was a man of almost incomprehensible obligations. Emperor of Rome, commander-in-chief, head of state, judge, philosopher, father, husband, general, and yet his meditations reveal a man who was ferociously intentional about his hours, who understood, at the deepest level, that every moment given to the unnecessary was a moment stolen from the essential. He writes about the urgency of living fully, of not squandering the gift of consciousness on the trivial, the performative, the merely habitual. Guard your time with the seriousness of a person who knows, not abstractly but viscerally, that it is finite, that there is a number of hours remaining in your life, and that number is counting down right now, that every hour you give away cannot be retrieved, and that the people who most loudly demand your time are very often the ones who least appreciate it, because they are not paying the same price you are. You are the ones spending the irreplaceable resource. Make sure it is spent in a way you can look back on without the stone in the chest. Number 3. Your energy, the invisible resource being quietly drained. Energy is something most people only think about when it is gone. When the exhaustion is so total, so pervasive, so bone deep that just the thought of one more demand, one more request, one more obligation, one more person who needs something from you, produces a feeling that is somewhere between dread and grief. And then they wonder how they got here. They wonder why, despite sleeping enough and eating reasonably well and doing nothing overtly wrong, they feel so consistently, profoundly empty. The answer, in almost every case, is not a sleep deficit or a nutritional problem or a medical issue. The answer is that their energy, that invisible, irreplaceable, utterly essential resource, is being taken from them. Not violently, subtly, incrementally, by people and interactions and obligations that they never stop to question because the extraction is too gradual, too polite, too well disguised as normal human social life to recognize as the drain it actually is. The ancient world had a word for this that the modern world does not have a good translation for. The Stoics called it pneuma, the vital breath, the animating force, the specific quality of aliveness that a person brings to everything they do. And they understood that pneuma is not automatically replenished. It is not unlimited. It is, in fact, one of the most delicate and most mismanaged resources in human life precisely because unlike money or time, its depletion is invisible until it is almost complete. There are specific categories of energy drain that the Stoics warned about with particular force. The first is what Seneca called the energy of useless conversation. The talk that goes nowhere, proves nothing, builds nothing, and yet demands from both participants the same neural and emotional resources that genuine, meaningful engagement requires. In the modern world, this category has expanded beyond anything the ancient philosophers could have imagined. It now includes the infinite scroll, the notification, the passive consumption of content designed to capture attention without offering anything real in return. All of it draws from the same finite reserve. The second category is what we might call the energy of managing other people's emotions. This is perhaps the most exhausting and least acknowledged form of energy expenditure in human social life. When you spend your interactions carefully monitoring how what you say is landing, softening what is true to protect what is comfortable, managing the emotional reactions of people who have not developed the capacity to manage their own, you are doing cognitive and emotional labor of extraordinary intensity. And the person on the receiving end of this labor almost never knows it is happening. They just know they feel better after talking to you. They rarely stop to ask why. Marcus Aurelius dealt with this constantly. As emperor, he was surrounded by people whose emotional equilibrium depended on his approval, his validation, his engagement. And his meditations show a man in constant conversation with himself about how to be genuinely present with people, genuinely compassionate, genuinely helpful, without allowing the emotional demands of the world to hollow him out. He writes about the need to maintain what he calls the ruling faculty, the highest part of the mind, as a still, clear center from which engagement with the world proceeds. Not a center that the world is allowed to disturb at will, but one that engages with the world on its own terms. The practical Stoic approach to energy protection begins with radical honesty about where your energy actually goes. Not where you think it goes, where it actually goes. For 1 week, track the quality of your energy before and after every significant interaction. Not whether the interaction was pleasant or unpleasant. Those are not always the same thing as energy building or energy depleting. Some of the most pleasant interactions leave you empty. Some of the most uncomfortable ones, difficult conversations, challenging work, demanding creative effort, leave you more alive. Track it honestly. The pattern that emerges will tell you more about who deserves your energy than any philosophical principle could. And then, protect accordingly. with firmness and with care. Not every request for your energy deserves a yes. Not every person who wants your presence deserves it in full. The most alive people in any room are not the ones who give their energy most freely. They are the ones who protect it most wisely, so that when they bring it to something or someone that genuinely deserves it, they bring all of it. Fully, without reservation, without depletion. And that fullness, that quality of presence that comes from a person who has protected their energy with the seriousness it deserves, is the most valuable thing you can offer another human being. Number 4. Your loyalty, the sacred thing being given to people who have not earned it. Loyalty is perhaps the most misunderstood concept in modern human relationships. Most people define it as a general orientation toward the people in their lives, a default of sticking by those they are connected to, of defending them, of prioritizing them, of giving them the benefit of the doubt again and again and again, regardless of what the accumulating evidence suggests about whether that orientation is deserved or wise. And this definition, this conception of loyalty as something you owe by default to whoever has claimed proximity to your life, is the source of an enormous amount of suffering. It is the reason people stay in friendships that have long since become one-sided. It is the reason people defend family members whose behavior they know to be indefensible. It is the reason people give their allegiance to employers, communities, causes, and individuals who have demonstrated, through repeated action, that they do not hold that allegiance with the care it deserves. The Stoics had a completely different understanding of loyalty, and it begins with a distinction that almost no one in the modern world makes clearly: the distinction between loyalty and proximity. Proximity is simply the fact of connection. Someone is in your life because of circumstance, history, shared environment, family relation, or the simple chance of how your paths crossed. Loyalty is something entirely different. Loyalty is an active, chosen, ongoing commitment to a person, one that is earned through demonstrated character and reciprocated through equivalent commitment. Proximity does not earn loyalty. History does not earn loyalty. Simply being in your life long enough does not earn loyalty. Marcus Aurelius, who had seen more people perform loyalty while practicing betrayal than almost any human being in history, who had watched senators swear oaths and break them, generals pledge allegiance and turn it into leverage, friends offer devotion that evaporated the moment the political winds shifted, wrote about the necessity of clear-eyed assessment of the people around him. Not cynicism. Accuracy. He wrote, "Begin the morning by saying to thyself, I shall meet with the busybody, the ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, envious, unsocial." Not because he believed all people were these things, but because he understood that among the people who would demand his loyalty that day, not all of them had earned it. And the failure to distinguish between those who had and those who had not was not generosity. It was a failure of discernment that would cost him, and through him, the empire, dearly. Here is the pattern that most people who give their loyalty to freely recognize with painful clarity when they finally step back and look at it. The people who demand the most loyalty are very often the ones who offer the least. The person who insists most loudly on your allegiance is frequently the person whose own allegiance has the most conditions attached. The relationship in which you are expected to defend, protect, prioritize, and sacrifice most consistently is, more often than not, the relationship in which the reciprocal investment is most conspicuously absent. Seneca wrote about friendship with extraordinary precision. He said that the wise person is selective about who they admit into genuine friendship, not because they are antisocial or cold, but because genuine friendship is one of the most valuable and rarest things in human life. It is a relationship of mutual growth, mutual honesty, mutual investment. And to give the name of friendship and the loyalty that goes with it to every person who occupies space in your life is not generosity. It is a devaluation of something sacred. Your loyalty is one of the most powerful things you possess. It says, I see you, I trust you, I will be here not just when it is convenient, but when it costs me something. That is not a small thing. That is an extraordinary gift. And like any extraordinary gift, it is most meaningful, most powerful, most transformative, most healing, when it is given to someone who has genuinely earned it. Someone who has demonstrated through action, not just words, that they hold it with the care it deserves. Someone who would give the same quality of loyalty in return. Give your loyalty. Absolutely give it. but give it the way the Stoics would, deliberately, wisely, based on demonstrated character rather than historical proximity. Because the person who gives their loyalty to everyone gives it to no one. And the person who gives it only to those who have earned it gives something so rare and so real that both lives are changed by it. Number 5. Your authentic self, the most costly sacrifice nobody talks about. This is the one that goes deepest. And for many people watching this, it will be the one that lands the hardest, because it describes something that has been happening for so long, so quietly, so thoroughly normalized by the world around them that they have almost stopped noticing the cost. You have been giving yourself away, not your time or your peace or your energy or your loyalty, though probably all of those too, but something more fundamental than any of them. You have been editing, suppressing, softening, shrinking, and performing versions of yourself that are calibrated to what other people find comfortable, acceptable, agreeable, and easy to be around. And in doing so, you have been slowly, steadily, almost imperceptibly losing access to the person you actually are. This is the most painful and the most common form of the giving described in this video. Because the people who ask for it, who through their expectations, their reactions, their need for agreement and validation and comfort, rarely know they are asking. They do not say, "Please be less than you are so that I can feel more comfortable." They communicate it through the quiet withdrawal that happens when you are too direct, through the tension that appears when you express a view they do not share, through the way the room changes when you bring your full, unedited self, and the people around you are not prepared to meet it. The Stoics called the authentic self the hegemonikon, the ruling faculty, the truest expression of what a person is at their core. And they were absolutely unanimous on one thing: the corruption of the hegemonikon, the allowing of external pressure to distort the truest expression of a person's character and values, is the single greatest tragedy that can befall a human life. Greater than poverty, greater than illness, greater than social rejection. Because all of those things happen to you. The corruption of the self is something you participate in. It requires your cooperation, however unconscious. Epictetus taught this with a ferocity born of personal experience. He had watched people with every external advantage, wealth, freedom, power, status, live lives of profound inner poverty because they had surrendered the only thing that matters: fidelity to their own character. And he had watched people with nothing, no property, no freedom, no social standing, live with a quality of inner richness that the outwardly successful people around them could not touch, because they had refused to give that one essential thing away. Think about the specific ways the authentic self gets given away. It happens in the opinions you soften because expressing them clearly might create conflict. In the dreams you quietly set aside because the people around you do not understand them or are threatened by them. In the standards you lower because maintaining them makes others uncomfortable. In the boundaries you fail to set because the discomfort of setting them feels more immediate than the cost of not setting them. In the 100 daily small performances of being slightly less, slightly quieter, slightly more agreeable, slightly more palatable than you actually are. Each of these individually seems trivial. Each one, in isolation, seems like a reasonable social accommodation. But accumulated across years, across a career, a marriage, a social circle, a family system, they become the autobiography of a person who never fully showed up to their own life, who spent their best years in the performance of an edited version of themselves, and discovered too late that the audience they were performing for was never capable of appreciating the unedited original anyway. Marcus Aurelius wrote the Meditations precisely because he needed a space, a completely private, completely honest space, where he could be exactly who he was without management, without performance, without the constant calibration to other people's expectations. He needed somewhere to speak in his own full voice. And the fact that he needed that space, the most powerful man on earth, who could have silenced anyone who criticized him, tells you everything about how universal and how relentless the pressure to edit yourself actually is. You need a self to come back to, not the performance, not the version that keeps the peace and manages the room and gets through the day without ruffling anyone. The actual self, the one with the unconventional views and the specific, non-negotiable values and the dreams that do not fit neatly into what others have decided your life should look like. That self is not optional. It is not a luxury. It is the foundation of everything that makes your life genuinely yours. Stop giving it away. Not all at once, not dramatically, not in ways designed to prove a point or win an argument, but quietly, firmly, daily. Begin choosing the authentic expression over the edited one. Begin speaking from your actual view rather than the one that will be most well received. Begin making decisions from your actual values rather than other people's expectations. Begin taking up the full space that the truest version of you requires. Not in arrogance, not in disregard for others, but in the simple, powerful, irreplaceable act of being genuinely, completely, unapologetically yourself. Because the world does not need another person who has sacrificed their authentic self on the altar of other people's comfort. What it needs, what every room, every relationship, every community actually needs, is people who have refused that sacrifice. People who know who they are and live from that knowledge fully. People who have stopped giving away the most precious thing they possess, the specific, irrepeatable, extraordinary person they actually are. Now let's see. What happens when you stop? The transformation nobody warns you about. When you begin to apply these 5 protections, when you stop giving your peace, your time, your energy, your loyalty, and your authentic self to people and situations that have not earned them, something happens that most people are genuinely not prepared for. And if no one warns you about it, it can feel like you are doing something wrong when you are actually doing something profoundly right. The first thing that happens is resistance. From the people who have become accustomed to receiving what you are no longer giving. Not necessarily with hostility, though sometimes that too, but with confusion, with disappointment, with the subtle or not so subtle communication that you have changed in a way that is inconvenient for them. This reaction is not evidence that you are wrong. It is evidence that the previous arrangement was real, that the giving was happening, that stopping it has consequences. These consequences are uncomfortable. They are also the price of every genuine act of self-respect. The Stoics had a name for this phase. They called it the testing of virtue. Because the moment you begin living from your actual values, protecting what matters, declining to give what should not be given, the world immediately tests whether you mean it, whether the commitment is real or performed, whether you will hold under social pressure or retreat into the old, comfortable, depleting patterns the moment someone makes it sufficiently uncomfortable to hold. Most people fail this test, not because they lack the understanding or the desire, because they underestimate how real the resistance will be and overestimate how much they have genuinely prepared for it. They expect change to be welcomed by the people around them. They do not expect, though they should, that the people who were benefiting from the old arrangement will, at least initially, experience the new one as a loss. And losses create reactions, sometimes angry ones, sometimes sad ones, almost always inconvenient ones. The Stoic preparation for this is the practice of anticipation. Marcus Aurelius began every morning by reminding himself what he was likely to encounter: the difficult people, the resistance, the attempts by the world to disturb what he had built in his interior. Not so that he could avoid these things, so that when they arrived, as they reliably did, they arrived into a prepared mind rather than a surprised one. A prepared mind can hold its ground. A surprised mind is very likely to retreat. But here is what the Stoics also promised, and what every person who has done this work long enough will confirm. The resistance does not last. Not forever. Not even for as long as you fear. Because human systems, including social systems, are adaptive. The people around you will, over time, adapt to the new version of what you offer and what you protect. Some of them will adapt beautifully, will rise to meet you at the new level, will discover that they actually prefer the authentic version of you to the edited one, will find that the relationship is richer and more real when it is between 2 full people rather than 1 full person and 1 performance. These are the relationships that survive and deepen. These are the ones worth keeping. Others will not adapt. They will leave, through distance, through conflict, through the simple withdrawal that happens when the arrangement that made the relationship work is no longer available. And this is painful. It is always painful to discover that what a relationship was built on was what you were willing to give rather than who you actually are. But the Stoics would remind you, gently but firmly, that a relationship built on your self-sacrifice is not a relationship with you. It is a relationship with your performance. And the ending of a relationship with your performance is not a loss. It is a correction. What fills the space? This is the question most people are too afraid to ask when they begin this process. because they are afraid the honest answer is nothing. That if they stop giving what they have been giving, they will be left with empty hands and an empty life. But the Stoic answer, and the experiential answer of everyone who has walked this path, is exactly the opposite. What fills the space is the life that was always waiting on the other side of the giving. The relationships that form when you are being genuinely yourself. The work that becomes possible when your energy is protected. The clarity that emerges when your peace is your own. The depth that becomes available when your loyalty means something because it is selective. The 5 protections are not losses. They are the conditions for everything real. The Stoic practice of discernment. How to know what to give and what to keep. Understanding what not to give is one thing. Knowing, in the specific, live, human messiness of actual relationships and actual moments, what to give and what to keep, that is another skill entirely. And the Stoics spent considerable time developing not just the philosophy of this question, but the practical tools for answering it correctly in real time. The foundational Stoic tool is the one Epictetus placed at the center of his entire teaching, the dichotomy of control. There are things within your control and things outside of it. Within your control, your judgments, your responses, your choices, your character, your values. Outside your control, other people's reactions, external outcomes, the conditions of the world, whether people appreciate what you give or use it against you. Applied to the question of what to give and what to protect, this principle does something elegant and important. It removes the outcome from the equation. You cannot control whether someone appreciates your time. You cannot control whether someone uses your loyalty wisely. You cannot control whether the authentic self you bring to a relationship is well received. What you can control is whether giving a specific thing in a specific situation is consistent with your values, with your most clear and honest assessment of who you are and what you are here to do. This reframe is liberating, because it means the question is no longer the anxiety-producing one, will this be received well? But the character-based one, is this consistent with who I intend to be? And that question has a different, cleaner, more accessible answer. The second Stoic tool for discernment is what Marcus Aurelius called seeing things clearly, stripping away the social pressure, the history, the guilt, the expectation, the performance, and looking at what is actually there. He had a practice of what modern Stoics call the objective description, in which he would describe a situation or a person in the plainest, most factual, most unemotionally charged language possible. Not to deny emotion, but to see past it to what is actually real. Applied to relationships and the question of giving, this practice sounds like, what is this person actually demonstrating through their behavior, as opposed to what they are asking me to believe about them? Not what they say they will do, what have they done? Not what the relationship looks like from the outside, what does it feel like from the inside? Not what I hope this person will be, what have they consistently shown me they are? This is not cynicism. It is the application of the most basic and most necessary form of intelligence to the domain where most people are the least intelligent, their relationships with other people. We are, as a species, extraordinarily good at self-deception in the domain of relationships. We see what we want to see. We believe what we are told rather than what we are shown. We give the benefit of the doubt to people who have already spent that benefit and are operating on credit they were never entitled to. Seeing clearly, actually, honestly, without the distorting lens of what we hope or fear, is the practice that makes discernment possible. And discernment is what makes genuine generosity possible. Because when you know the difference between giving that serves both parties and giving that depletes one and enables the other, you can give freely to the former without guilt and decline firmly on the latter without cruelty. Seneca put the practical test simply. After this interaction, will I be more or less capable of virtue? Will I be more or less equipped to live well, think clearly, and be the person I intend to be? Not more or less liked. Not more or less comfortable. More or less capable. That is the Stoic standard, and it is the most honest, most practically useful measure of whether any given act of giving serves the life you are trying to build. When saying no is the most generous thing you can do. Here is perhaps the most counterintuitive idea in this entire video, and the one that, if you genuinely absorb it, will change the quality of every relationship in your life. The most generous thing you can sometimes do for another person is not give them what they are asking for. This will feel wrong at first. It will feel like a rationalization, a philosophical justification for selfishness dressed up in the language of care. But stay with me, because the Stoics understood something about human development and human relationships that most people in the modern world, with its emphasis on accommodation and validation and the avoidance of discomfort, have completely lost sight of. When you give people your peace every time they need to disturb it, you are not helping them develop the capacity to manage their own emotional states. You are becoming a dependency. When you give your time to everyone who asks for it, you are not teaching the people around you to respect what is precious. You are teaching them that it is available on demand. When you give your energy to every drain that presents itself, you are not modeling healthy engagement. You are demonstrating that exhaustion is the appropriate response to being alive. And when you give your loyalty without requiring it to be earned, and give your authentic self without requiring the relationship to be safe enough to receive it, you are not being generous. You are being self-eliminating. You are removing yourself from the equation and replacing your actual self with a set of services. And no relationship built on a service arrangement is a relationship of genuine depth or genuine love. Epictetus taught that the highest form of care for another person is the kind that helps them develop their own virtue, not the kind that makes their life more comfortable in the short term, not the kind that removes all friction and difficulty from their experience, the kind that treats them as a full, capable, developing human being who is worthy of honest engagement, even when honest engagement is uncomfortable. This means that sometimes the most loving thing is to say no. To say, I am not going to give you my peace today because doing so does not actually help you, and it costs me too much. To say, I cannot give you my time for this because I need to invest it in something that serves both of us better. To say, I am going to be honest with you even though what I have to say is not what you want to hear, because treating you to comfortable dishonesty is not the care you deserve. Marcus Aurelius understood this in the context of governance. He wrote about the temptation to simply give people what they wanted, the crowds, the senators, the courtiers who came to him with their requests and their demands and their expectations. And he wrote about why that temptation, however understandable, was a failure of genuine leadership, because giving people what they want is not the same as giving them what they need. And the leader, the parent, the friend, the partner, who cannot make that distinction is not serving the people they are responsible to. They are serving their own need to be liked. The no that comes from genuine care is one of the most powerful things you can offer another person. It says, I see you clearly enough to know that what you are asking for is not actually what will serve you. I respect you enough to tell you the truth rather than the comfortable version. I care enough about this relationship to protect its integrity rather than its comfort. That kind of no takes courage. It requires the willingness to be temporarily misunderstood, temporarily resented, temporarily the person who is making things difficult. But it builds something that easy yeses never build: genuine respect. The specific, unshakable respect that develops between people who have been honest with each other under conditions where dishonesty would have been easier. That respect is the foundation of the relationships that actually last. The ones that survive difficulty, that deepen over time, that become the most important connections of a life. Those relationships are almost never built on giving everything that is asked for. They are built on giving what is true. Let's look at the 5 people the Stoics said to give nothing extra to. The Stoics were not abstract in their warnings. They did not simply say, be careful what you give. They described, in specific terms, the specific types of people whose requests for your peace, time, energy, loyalty, and authentic self are most likely to cost you more than any giving could be worth. Not as a justification for general misanthropy, but as a practical guide for the discernment that genuine flourishing requires. The first is the flatterer, the person whose agreement with you is so consistent, so unfailing, so perfectly calibrated to what you most want to hear that it begins to feel less like genuine affirmation and more like a mirror you cannot trust. Seneca devoted enormous energy to warning against the flatterer, and his reason was precise. The flatterer does not see you. They see a version of you that they have constructed to serve their own purposes, usually the purpose of securing your goodwill, your resources, or your protection. Giving your time, your energy, and especially your trust to the flatterer is giving these things to a performance that may have nothing in common with the actual person underneath. The second is the perpetual victim, The person whose life is structured around the narrative of their own suffering, whose relationships are organized around the extraction of sympathy, whose primary mode of connection is the drawing out of your care and concern and emotional energy into the bottomless well of their stated need. This person is not necessarily dishonest. Their suffering may be entirely real, but the pattern, the consistent, unvarying, every interaction pattern of taking without giving, of draining without replenishing, is what makes continued unlimited giving dangerous. You cannot pour enough into an unfillable vessel, and continuing to pour is not compassion. It is participation in a dynamic that serves neither of you. The third is the person who is loyal to you in public and uses you in private. Marcus Aurelius saw more of this type than anyone. The advisor who praised him in court and undermined him in private. The general who pledged loyalty on the field and maneuvered against him in Rome. The person who performs devotion when it is visible and performs something entirely different when the audience is gone. The tell is always the gap, the specific, observable gap between what this person says and what they do when the social consequences of their behavior are removed. The fourth is the person who mistakes your boundaries for rejection. When you protect your peace, they interpret it as abandonment. When you protect your time, they experience it as dismissal. When you decline a specific request, they experience it as a comprehensive statement about your feelings toward them. This person is not malicious. They are operating from a place of genuine emotional pain, very often from a wound that long predates their relationship with you. But the dynamic they create, in which every act of self-protection becomes an injury to manage and repair, is one of the most exhausting and most effectively depleting relationships a person can be inside of. Giving this person unlimited access to the five things is not healing them. It is enabling the wound to continue organizing both of your lives. The fifth, and the most important, is the person who uses your authentic self against you. The one who listens to your honest expression and stores it as ammunition. Who takes your vulnerability and reflects it back at you as weakness. Who receives your real views and uses them as evidence of your deficiencies. This is the person around whom you have learned, through the specific, lived experience of what happens when you are genuine, that it is not safe to be fully yourself. And the Stoics would tell you, with complete clarity and without apology, around this person, your authentic self is not a gift to give. It is a resource to protect, until the relationship demonstrates that it is capable of holding what you actually are, with care, with respect, with the reciprocity of genuine human engagement. Keep the most precious thing you have where it is safe. These five types are not enemies. They are simply people with whom the unlimited, unprotected giving described in this video will cost more than it can return. See them clearly. Engage with them honestly. But measure what you give against what the relationship has demonstrated it is capable of holding. That measurement is not meanness. It is the most fundamental act of self-respect a human being can perform. Most definitely, let's see the life that becomes possible when you stop the other side of the five protections. We have spent this video talking about what to stop giving. And now, before we close, I want to spend time on what becomes available when you do. Because the Stoic philosophy of protection is not ultimately about withholding. It is about creating the conditions for something extraordinary. For a quality of life and a quality of relationship that is simply not possible when the five most essential things you possess are being given away without discernment. When you protect your peace, something remarkable happens to your capacity for genuine presence. The person who has protected their peace, who has refused to let every passing storm disturb the center of their experience, develops a quality of stillness that transforms every interaction they have. Not the stillness of disengagement, of not caring, of going through the motions. The stillness of genuine rootedness, of a person who is so completely inside their own experience that they can be fully, truly, undistractedly present with another. That quality of presence is one of the rarest and most valuable things one human being can offer another. And it is only available to the person who has kept their peace intact enough to bring it to the moment. When you protect your time, something happens to the quality of what you build with it. Time protected from the unnecessary is time available for the essential. And the essential, the relationships that genuinely matter, the work that genuinely expresses who you are, the growth that genuinely develops who you are capable of becoming, requires not just any time, but protected time. uninterrupted, uncompromised, deliberately invested time. The person who has stopped giving their hours to whoever claims them lives inside a completely different relationship with their own days, a relationship characterized by intention, by direction, by the specific satisfaction of a person who knows that how they spent today was actually how they wanted to spend it. When you protect your energy, you discover something that most chronically exhausted people have forgotten: what you actually feel like when you are not depleted. The specific quality of aliveness that is your natural state, before it was slowly consumed by relationships and obligations and social performances that were never worth the cost. That aliveness is not a youthful memory that cannot be recovered. It is your actual experience when the drains are managed. And from that state of genuine energy, the world is a fundamentally different place. Work is different. Relationships are different. The creative engagement with your own life is different. Everything is different, not because the world has changed, but because you have finally stopped running it on empty. When you protect your loyalty, when you give it only to those who have earned it, the relationships that receive it become something that most people only read about in books. The specific depth, the specific safety, the specific freedom that exists between two people who know that the other's loyalty means something, because it is not given freely to everyone, because it has been demonstrated to be real, is one of the most extraordinary experiences available in human life. Most people never have it, not because they are unworthy of it, but because they have devalued it by giving it to everyone. Keep it rare, keep it earned, and watch what the people who receive it do with something they know they actually deserved. And when you protect your authentic self, when you stop editing it for other people's comfort and begin living from its full expression, something happens that the Stoics called the return to nature. The return to what you actually are before the performances and the accommodations and the years of social calibration built up around you. The specific relief, the specific rightness, the specific quality of being in a life that is genuinely yours. Not the life that was shaped by other people's expectations, but the one that emerges when you are finally, fully, unapologetically living from your actual self. That is what the Stoics called eudaimonia, human flourishing, the deepest, most lasting, most genuinely satisfying experience of being alive. It does not come from giving more. It comes from giving rightly, from protecting what must be protected so that what you do give carries the full weight of everything you actually are. From understanding, as the Stoics understood with complete clarity, that the most generous life is not the one that gives everything to everyone. It is the one that gives the right things to the right people, from the fullness of a self that has been honored, protected, and allowed to grow into its complete expression. That life is available to you. It has always been available, but it requires, as everything real requires, the courage to stop giving what should never have been given in the first place. Your peace, your time, your energy, your loyalty, your authentic self. These are not social currency. They are not obligations. They are not the price of being loved. They are yours. Keep them. Wisely, carefully, unapologetically, keep them. And give them only to what is worthy of them. Because the moment you do, the life you have been trying to build, the one that keeps appearing at the edges of your vision, the one that feels possible but just out of reach, will finally, completely, and permanently arrive. Conclusively, 5 things. Just 5. And yet protecting these 5 things. Actually protecting them. Not just understanding why you should, but doing the daily, sometimes uncomfortable, sometimes lonely work of keeping them in your own hands, changes the entire quality of a life. Your peace is not a service. Your time is not a gift owed by default. Your energy is not a renewable resource that will always come back. Your loyalty is not something that proximity earns. And your authentic self is not an inconvenience to be managed for other people's comfort. These are the most essential things you possess. They are the raw materials of everything meaningful you will ever build. And they deserve, you deserve, the protection that the Stoics spent centuries trying to teach people to give them. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, 3 of the most extraordinary human beings who ever lived, from 3 completely different positions in the social hierarchy. Emperor, slave, senator, all arriving at the same essential truth. What makes a life great is not what you are willing to give away. It is what you are willing to protect, not in selfishness, in wisdom, in the deep, clear-eyed understanding of what is precious and what is not, and the courage to treat what is precious accordingly. You have been generous enough. You have given enough. Now comes the other side of that generosity, the generosity toward yourself that makes every other form of generosity sustainable. The protection of what must be protected so that what you offer the world is the best of what you are, not the remainder of what you have left after everyone else has taken their share. Begin today, not dramatically, quietly, firmly, one protection at a time. Your peace first, then your time, then your energy, then your loyalty, and then, the most important and the most difficult, your authentic, unedited, extraordinary self. The world does not need another depleted giver. It needs you, the real, protected, fully expressed version of you. And that version is built exactly one no at a time. If this video gave you something real today, if something in here shifted something in how you think about what you owe and what you own, follow this channel right now. Hit the follow button and the notification bell so you never miss a week of this. Every week on this channel we go this deep. Ancient wisdom, modern clarity, content that actually changes how you move through the world. Follow now, and drop a comment below telling me which of the 5 things you have been giving away the most. Which one are you starting to protect today? I read every single comment, and your answer matters. Stay stoic. Protect what is precious. And I will see you in the next video.